You can see from the dark line in this chart, what does it show? We've got the share of the population that is above 65, and this used to be considered old age previously. It was the age of retirement, 65. And so this is the share of the population in the dark blue line for the world economy. And over time, you can see on the x-axis, that's the number of years. So as we go forward, we start this chart at 1950. What happened in 1950? The share of the population that is over 65 was 10%. That's the figure at the bottom in the blue. But as you go across in terms of time and also the forecast, you can see that where we are today, 16% of the people over 65 where we are today is over here 2022, it's below 10%, but as we move to 2050, that number will rise to 16% for the world economy. And as we get to 2100, the end of this century, 1 in 4 people will be over the age of 65. So that's the aging population in the global sphere. I've added here some red dots and some numbers here. That's the UK, and you can see the UK numbers are above the global numbers, right? So aging is more of an issue in the UK, and in fact, Western economies, you can see the US line there, some light shaded lines, and actually all Western economies, you know, France, Germany, it's the same story. Aging population is an issue, and more than the world. And why is that? The world aging is less because we have younger populations in Africa and India, and that's what brings the world down. So aging is a global issue, not just a UK issue. The second fact I want to bring to the table is what used to be called the population pyramid, right? We used to call it the population pyramid. Why? Because, you know, in previous generations, like look at 1921, we just took some snapshots here. 1921, it was actually a pyramid. What does that mean? The population pyramid, what does this show? It shows every bar going horizontally across, shows the number of people at each age groups, and at the bottom of the chart, you have the youngest age groups, and as you go up, you have people who are up to whatever, 90 years old, and you can see that the bars get smaller and smaller, and that basically shows the aging pyramid. That back in 1921, given the birth rate, given net migration, and given the death rate, we had lots of people who were young, and as you grow older, the share of that population was falling, and that's why you get the pyramid. But where are we, you know, in 2025? I know that's next year, but based on populations, you know, you're starting to see that thickening out. So as you get older, given longevity, people are living longer, better health, better nutrition, so on and so forth. We see more people at the top, and the shape is changing. We get that thickening out, and projecting forward, the UN shows that actually we're going to have more at the top. There's another phenomena going on here as well, is obviously the birth rate has been declining. So given changing preferences, increased female participation, and living standards as well, we see the number of young actually falling. And I know I read an article in The Economist which said that the shape has actually become kite-shaped for some countries like Japan. So that's aging in terms of facts. What about the channels? Why does aging matter? That's what we're talking about today. An aging population, what that means is the number of young workers and the number of workers, people working in the labour force, tends to fall, got the downward arrow, and the number of old workers or the pensioners tends to rise. So we're going to be talking about this with our experts in a minute. So I'm just setting the scene. So what are the channels? So the economy and growth. If you've got fewer people who are of working age, the working population falls, and so that's a negative for the economy. Well, what about productivity? If you think about economic growth, the two key drivers are population growth and productivity growth. I put a question mark there, and this speaks to Mary's point of economists sitting on the fence. And, you know, there's a bit of debate. Does productivity fall if there's fewer younger people? Some people might think that young people bring the ideas, the innovation. That needs to be borne out in the data. So that's an empirical question. That's what economists like to do. Let's see what the data says. And then for the individual, why does an aging population matter? If you're living longer, that means that you might spend more time, a greater share of your life in retirement, right? So what are you going to do in that retirement? Yes, you may go on a very long holiday, but actually, guess what? You might have to save more. So that has financial implications. So we have to either rely on ourselves, we have to save more. Georgie's going to talk more about this, or we have to rely on the government. And that's where Heidi is going to come in. And that takes us to what is the implication for the government. So countries like the UK or any economy where they do provide social support for their pensioners, this obviously means if you have an aging population, more people who are going to get a pension, that means that debts and deficits are going to potentially rise if you do nothing, if the system stays the same. But actually, there could be policy changes. So when I started work at the Bank of England, I remember people were saying, you're going to retire when you're 60, that's when you get the state pension. And now I know it's 68. I'm actually happy about that, but some people may not be. So these are the policy changes that you might see in order to offset the impact on the public finances. The government might say you've got to work longer, or you get less from the state pension, or you have to raise taxes from another channel. I do however, want to mention one thing is that although Tara did say one thing we do know is demographics, and demographics does have a negative impact on some of these channels, there is actually another side to the story. Demographics is just one side, and that is technology and AI. And we've been seeing some of that in recent days with conversations about DeepSeek. So, we at Vanguard have done some work saying that demographics is part of the story, and hey, guess what? There's another part, which is technology, and that could be pulling in the opposite direction. So if you go back to my channel 1, it could be a great thing for productivity, and that actually works in the opposite direction. So we innovate before we age, as my boss says, we might be okay. And then finally, just my final slide on the media coverage. So yes, we're in competition today with Rachel Reeves, who's hosting a speech just about now about the future of the public finances or the future of the economy. So very, very topical in terms of the content today. I also wanted to just highlight a few more things. Many of us in the room may have read the book 100-Year Life and what it means for you as an individual. You might have a different type of career path. You may take time off before you hit 65 to travel and be in and out of work and may not fully retire at 65. And finally, just to sort of say, aging population, Andrew Bailey, Bank of England, long-term threat to the economy, warns Andrew Bailey. So here are just some